What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Paul with Burley Fishing here, coming to you with some tips and tricks. Really, this one though is specifically going to be centered around the Lipless Crankbait. If you don't know what that is, it is one of the absolute best all-time baits to fish in cold weather. It looks just like this guy right here. Now, before we get into all of that, I want to say thank you for stopping by the channel. Thank you so much for, I am assuming you're smashing the heck out of the subscribe button, you're ringing the notification bell so you can see when we post the next video, and you're hitting the thumbs up button too. I'm sure you're doing all of that, so thank you for having already done that. Now, like I was saying, the Lipless Crankbait is one of the all-time best cold water baits out there. Yes, the jerkbait is a phenomenal cold water bait. There is no doubt about it. The square bill, a crankbait, awesome bait. These are all good baits for when the water's super cold, but it's starting to warm up and those fish are starting to chase those moving baits. They're starting to just chase bait fish patterns because they're chasing bait fish. So that is when you're gonna break out the old Lipless. Now, what I specifically wanna provide for you today is not just how to fish a lipless. The great thing about a lipless crankbait is you can go ahead and tie it on. You can cast it about 6,000 miles away. You can search like a ton of water really fast, and knowing nothing, you can just retrieve and you can catch fish. There's no doubt about it. You can absolutely just go ahead and have yourself a day casting out and retrieving. Not knowing anything, you can catch fish. That's just what it's gonna do. And that's great. But what I wanna give you is 3 things that maybe you're forgetting to do, maybe you didn't know that you could do. 3 things that are gonna take the lipless crankbait from being like one of the best to your absolute favorite cold water bait. Number 1 out of 3 on my list of things that you are not doing when you're fishing a lipless crankbait is you're not fishing shallow. I'm telling you right now, it seems like a deep diving bait only. It seems like it's for deep water or these deeper water because there are these big, giant hooks right here on this bad boy, and they seem like they're gonna get hooked up a whole heck ton if you were out there fishing, 6, 7, 8 inches of water. Normally, you would be right, but I'm here to tell you there are some ways that you can absolutely get after that trim water, and because there's not a lot of people throwing in that trim water, this is an absolute killer, even in the shallow water. Now, the first thing that you can do is you can downsize your lipless crankbait. This is a Rapala Rip and Wrap. It is a phenomenal bait. Compare that to the Strike King Red Eye Shad, and come on, zoom in for me there. Compare that to the Strike King Red Eye Shad, and you can see that is a huge difference. Now, what is a lighter bait gonna do? It means it's gonna suspend up in the water a little bit higher. It's gonna be a little bit lighter. You're getting under that ½ ounce, and that's where you're really gonna start to see this do really well in more shallow water. Now, the other thing that you can do to really help yourself out other than downsizing is keep your rod tip way up in the air on your retrieve. Just cast it out, keep that rod tip up, maybe even hold out the elbows. That's gonna keep the bait riding up a little bit higher and gonna keep you from getting snagged on anything that is in the shallows. And then lastly, you absolutely can just go ahead and retrieve that a little bit faster. Get yourself a little bit higher speed retrieve gear ratio bait caster and really burn that thing. One thing people forget to do a lot of times is mix up their retrieve speeds. You cast it out just like a crankbait and you just retrieve it at your like standard speed, and you forget that slowing way down or even speeding way up and burning this sucker can really help trigger some of those fish. Now, my number 2 tip, thing that you're not doing to make yourself more successful with a lipless crankbait, is you're not fishing cover. And I don't just mean a little bit of grass, I mean like all the grass. And I don't just mean like a little bit of wood, I mean go look for a pile of stumps. If you're not bumping some of those stumps occasionally, you are not taking full advantage of the lipless crankbait. And honestly, again, I know that we're looking at 2 giant hooks with these lipless crankbaits, and that's kind of the deal, right? You're throwing a big bait with no bill in front to deflect off all that cover. Now, there's a couple things you can do, again, to make yourself even more successful. It's not just about throwing at grass. My first tip when you're throwing at grass, and I think grass is the most important thing that you can look for. Wood is very important, but I think grass is even more important. If there's grass underneath your bait, it's probably the best case scenario for fishing that lipless crankbait. So how do you know if it's really good grass for fishing a lipless crankbait, or maybe you're looking for a different spot? If you go ahead and cast out and you're seeing healthy grass underneath, that's really good. So like greener, a little bit more full, that's probably gonna hold more bass, and that's grass that you wanna see. Because also when you get snagged in healthier grass, it's got better roots, it's a little bit more lively, and it's not gonna just come out when your bait hits it. You're gonna be able to get it snagged a little bit, snap that rod tip and pull the lipless crankbait right out of the grass, and you will find that as long as there's not a ton of grass coming out with you, that may be when you get struck. Now, another thing you might notice is that the rear treble is the one that's actually getting snagged the most on grass, rocks, and that sort of thing. So one thing you'll see a lot of times is you'll see there's actually a smaller hook on the rear of your lipless crankbait. So you can see this is maybe a size number 4, and then maybe you got a size number 6 in the back. That's a modification that you can actually make yourself. So go ahead and get some extra treble hooks, and then take a look and say, okay, I'm gonna go one size down from whatever is comes from the factory in my lipless crankbait. The other thing that you can do is you can just go ahead and take this bad boy off. If you're in a spot where you know there's a whole bunch of wood, like if you see a bunch of stumps, get yourself a lipless crankbait and just go ahead and take that bad boy in the back right off. I promise you, if you're hitting stumps, the bass that's gonna hit this is not gonna go ahead and sip it from the back. They are going to inhale the lipless, and having the one treble, you're gonna have, your hookup ratio will be just fine. Trust me, to be just fine. The other thing too is when people see those stumps and laydowns, this is not the bait that they're gonna throw at them. They're gonna throw something totally different. So by the time you actually huck this into like all that cloud, like all that wood, and you're maybe the first person that's throwing that lipless there, yes, one treble, totally worth it. That's one of the best ways to make sure that you don't get hung up in that wood. Now, another modification that you can make to your hooks to make yourself even more successful, get hooked up less, and you can do this on absolutely any lipless, is go to an EWG style short shank hook. So this hook that you can see right here, it's got a shorter shank, that's that portion right here, and it's got an extra wide gap hook. That means the hook point actually comes back towards the shank right there. That is going to give you a phenomenal hookup ratio, keep the hooks closer and tighter to the body, and make you less prone to hooking up, whether it's grass, wood, rocks, or otherwise. Now, my number 3 tip, the thing that I think people forget to do all of the time, is really take a look at the construction of their bait and make sure that when they're going out, yes, it's good to have some jerk baits, but if you're running a lipless and you're having some success, it's really important to have like a whole bunch of options within your lipless assortment. Now, what do I mean by that? Yes, it's very important to have a smaller bait and a larger bait. I think that is just something that just sort of makes sense. If you're seeing smaller fish, you're gonna want a smaller profile bait. You're going for match the hatch. It doesn't have to be the same color. It's okay to have a brighter crankbait, but if you're seeing right off the bat that all of the fish that you're seeing, the bait fish, are like half the size of what you're throwing, you got yourself a problem. And vice versa. If you've only got the little one and you're seeing a bunch of 3-inch, gizzard shad running around, go ahead and grab yourself a big boy. It's okay to upgrade. But there's also a couple rules of thumb that you want to keep in mind. Now, I already talked about fishing shallows, go ahead and grab yourself a smaller bait. This is a 2-inch rip and wrap. This is like, I think, a 1/4 ounce. That's gonna do much better in shallower areas. You're just gonna be more effective. It's gonna be more than likely the size of the bait fish that you're gonna see, and it's gonna be more effective at fishing lighter cover. Now, almost everything else can be covered by the Strike King Red Eye Shad. This is one of the absolute best lipless crankbaits that has ever been made. It's a phenomenal bait, and it covers a wide variety of depths as well. You can fish this to like a couple of feet. You can also plumb the depths with it. You get all the way down to 10, 20, 30 feet, and you can yo-yo this, even vertically jig one of these and catch fish no problem all day long. But one thing that people don't always gravitate towards is like the 1 ounce, and in this case, the 3/4 ounce Rick Clun. Now, this bait has a totally different action than your red eye shad, and I'll show you why. And this is why I say you got to look at the construction of your bait. It's not just the weight. Look at the profile on this body. Big, wide head, totally rounded, versus this super trim, super angular red eye shad from Strike King. This one also has a huge belly, the Rick Clun does, versus this really slim and trim red eye shad. Totally different baits. And because of that, and the weight difference, right? 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, that's a huge difference. That means you can cast this way longer. That means it's gonna get down way deeper, way faster. This is a search and destroy bait. I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna try and zoom in. There are 3 giant ball bearings inside of this bait. There's one right behind the eye and then 2 in the belly that you can see pretty clearly there. This thing is, I'll try, maybe you can hear it. It's heckin' loud. Big, it sounds like a soda can in there. Versus the red eye shad. Tinny rattle, if you will. totally different. So you're making a totally different sound. You're disturbing water also in a totally different way. This red-eye shad, it almost has itself a little bill right here, almost like a square bill. You can see that's gonna definitely bump some stumps. That's gonna be phenomenal. Versus the Rit Clun here, totally not meant for the same purpose. It is going to run more vertically, but obviously the farther you cast, it's going to be a little more vertical. But this thing is not going to be the best for bumping stumps. It's going to get down quickly. I would say this one's more for like an open water situation where you want to cover even more water than you normally can, and you want to cast a couple 100 miles, or when you need to get down deep real quick. So understanding how the lipless is built and how it's going to react differently, I think is really important. Now, there's some hybrid styles out there. There's somewhere in between a long caster and a deep diver and a stump bumper that they kind of do everything really well. This is the Bill Lewis rattle trap. This is one of the absolute classic profiles that's out there. It's got that long nose that'll absolutely deflect on some stuff, but it's also real trim, and it's gonna get a really tight vibration. And if you give it a listen, it's even higher pitched than that striking red-eye shad was. Totally different bait. So by having 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 different profiles, you can go ahead and give yourself a lot of options to cover different water. And the last thing I'll mention, there are some like really unique like modifications and modified versions of the lipless that are coming out. Like this one right here is a great example. This is an EMA suspending lipless crankbait. Now, what does that mean? It's actually going to suspend in the water at a certain depth. This one's somewhere in the 3 to 4 foot range. So if you need something that you can actually pause, because maybe you want to fish this a little bit like a jerkbait, you're finding those fish are really cold water, really lethargic, but maybe they're up shallow, this is a way for you to target that specific fish. Or maybe you need to slow down, but you need to suspend it above cover still, and every one of the other lipless, it's just moving too quickly. This is a phenomenal option for you. A heck of a lot lighter, still has the rattle. Whoa, this one's in my shirt. Still has the rattle. Actually kind of a loud one, louder than I thought. But a totally different profile. You can see it's got that fat belly, definitely imitating more of like an actual bait fish profile than say, you know, the Rit Clun, right? Totally got a little bit of a different profile, and maybe even even more different than that Bill Lewis, that rattle trap. Now those are my 3 tips. Now the one thing I will say that I haven't brought up, I haven't talked a lot about color. I do think that color is important. I will say I think profile and speed and size are probably more important because you're getting to the right fish. That's way more important, and mimicking the forage is important, but I'd say in general, just go natural. If you go ahead and get yourself a striking red-eye shad in that sexy shad color, you are going to be just fine in almost every single situation. Now, I do also recommend that you get a dark color for that dark water situation. Get you something with a darker profile. If you can only get 2, those are the 2 I recommend. But in the spring, there is a cheat code. And this is one of those if you know type of deals. If you don't have orange craw or a bright red striking red-eye shad, I'm telling you right now you're fishing at a disadvantage. Like there's probably a 4-week period where like this is the only color that's gonna get annihilated. This is my personal experience. I'm sure that every single person with a fishing rod will tell you something different, but when it comes to color, I wanna have a light color that mimics like shad or minnows. I wanna have a dark color for that dark water, maybe something with a really loud thump, and then I absolutely at all times have to have like, this is a restock for me. I have to have that bright craw. I prefer the striking red-eye shad and orange craw. That's my #1 all-time favorite. But sometimes that is the only thing that is getting bit. Period. The end. So if you're not carrying that, I'm telling you, that's an arrow that you're really going to wish you had in your quiver. Now those are my 3 things that you are not doing and technically 4. I gave you a bonus, but those are my 3 tips. Those are my 3 things that you are not doing that you should start doing to make yourself more successful fishing a lipless crankbait this spring. Now let's review very quickly. #1, make sure that you are fishing that shallow water. And to make yourself more successful, get yourself a bait that has a smaller treble hook in the back, or if you're really worried about getting hung up and losing that bait, go ahead and take the rear treble off entirely. Speed up your retrieve and keep that rod tip super high. Number 2, make sure that you're fishing cover. Look for that high quality, the healthiest grass that you can find in your lake, and go ahead and make sure that you're getting as close to that as possible without getting hung up. If you find yourself getting whole chunks and chunks of grass as you're pulling up, just speed up your retrieval a little bit, right? Or grab yourself a lighter or maybe even a suspending lipless. That is gonna be where the fish are. That is gonna be where you wanna be, and you need to get yourself above some grass. In addition to that, make sure you're fishing wood. Debo's Fishing says it best. If you see wood, pitch to wood. I would include, go ahead and sling yourself a lipless crankbait over some wood, and you are going to find those fish. And remember, a lot of people, because they're worried about getting hung up, are not fishing a lipless crankbait in that area. Go ahead, take that rear treble off, get yourself a smaller one, put on some EWG, extra wide gap short shank, aftermarket treble hooks. Just do whatever you gotta do to be able to get your lipless crankbait over some cover, bump some stumps. And my number 3 tip, make sure that you've got a bunch of, at least a few different profiles and sizes to give yourself a different kind of wobble, to give yourself a different kind of presentation, and make sure that you can match the hatch. Whether that's the stock standard red eye shad, whether that's a little tiny ribbon wrap or one of these little 1/2-inch 1/4 ounce sizes, or that's a big 3/4 ounce, or all the way up to, I think these go up to a 1 ounce, the big Rick Clun special. Look for one of those, something like that, that can get you way down deep when you know that that's where the fish are. And then my number 4, my bonus, is make sure you carry something in a craw color. Orange, red, something really vibrant. I'm telling you, in the spring, there are just gonna be days where that's the only thing that's gonna get bit. So those are my 3 +1 tips. I really seriously hope that those were helpful for you. If there's something I missed, if there's something that should have been called out, please go ahead and leave a comment below and be like, hey, you idiot, go ahead and make sure you tell them to use X, Y, and Z, or my favorite tip of all time is, whatever. Please, please, please. This is certainly a learning opportunity, and this does not even nearly cover the gamut of things that you should be doing to be successful with lipless, but these are the 3 things that I think you're not doing that you should do more of. So again, I hope this is enjoyable for you, or at least you learned something. And please check out Burley Fishing. We do videos like this as well. We do tips, we do tricks, we do fishing videos, we do unboxings and gear reviews. We even have a live stream every single Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Please come and join us. We would love to have you in chat. Also, please, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, smash the like button, ring that notification bell so you can see when we post the next monster bass tips, tricks, fun fishing video, and maybe we will even catch you out on the next video.